My father owns 6 rental properties, lives comfortably, and vacations in Europe every year. And me, his biological son, I had to drop out of school because I couldn't afford the tuition. When I once asked him if he ever thought about his kids, he just shrugged and said, "Why should I suffer for you?" That was the moment I realized I never really existed in his heart. When I was a kid, I used to think my father was just busy. Not because he said so, but because he was always absent. Absent at parent-teacher meetings, absent on my first day of school, absent the first time I had a high fever and mom wasn't home. Other times, he was physically there, but more like a shadow, sitting behind a newspaper, passed out on the couch, silent in front of the TV like the outside world didn't concern him. I always assumed he was an average man, just a regular government worker, earning enough to get by. Whenever I asked for money to buy books, he'd frown. When my bike broke down, he'd say, "Walk for a few days. It's good for your health." While my friends were dropped off and picked up by their parents, I rode my bike alone. While they got birthday gifts, I got a dry nod and, "You're old enough. Don't expect that kind of stuff." It wasn't until I turned 17 that I found out my father wasn't broke at all. A relative casually mentioned that my dad had inherited 6 rental houses, an old row of properties in a quiet neighborhood, untouched, but still bringing in steady rent. They said it like it was common knowledge. "You're lucky. Your dad's quietly loaded." I smiled awkwardly, didn't say anything. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Turns out, he didn't say no to me because he was poor. He just didn't want to say yes. Didn't want to share. Didn't want to support. Didn't want to care. The memories of him kept flooding back. But this time, I wasn't a child trying to justify them. I remembered standing at the university cashier's window, calling him with one last bit of hope. "Dad, tuition went up. I'm short about $1,500. He cut me off. "Figure it out. I worked like a dog for everything I have. Don't expect handouts." I hung up, feeling like someone had dropped a rock into my chest. My father had everything: a steady job, 6 rental properties, early retirement, annual trips to Europe. Meanwhile, I was working since freshman year, skipping meals to save money for the train. But the pain wasn't about money. It was the coldness, the deliberate neglect. When someone who brought you into this world has enough to help and still chooses not to, you grow up with a hole inside that nothing can ever quite fill. At first, I didn't hate him. I tried to understand, tried to become better, stronger, hoping he'd be proud one day. But now, I finally understand. It's not that I wasn't good enough to be loved. It's that I was never chosen to be loved in the first place. I've walked 5 kilometers home after shifts because I couldn't afford bus fare. I've cried in public restroom stalls after being denied a scholarship due to missing documents. I've eaten dry bread for a week just to afford exam materials. And all that time, he was somewhere in Santorini or Paris, sipping espresso and taking photos with strangers. Do you know what the most bitter feeling is? It's knowing your father could save you with just a phone call, but he chooses not to. It's knowing you weren't abandoned because he had nothing, but because he had no intention of sharing anything with you. No words of encouragement, no check-ins, not even a simple, "How are you?" when I was hospitalized from exhaustion. And that's when I began to understand. Some people aren't incapable of giving. They just never intended to give it to you. I don't need his money. I never really did. What I needed was a father. A father who could listen. Who could put a hand on my shoulder and say, "It's okay, son. Let me take care of this one." Who could look at me as someone worthy of love, not a burden. But he's lived like royalty his whole life. And me? I've always been the son, standing outside the gate, looking in. Not because I didn't try to step inside, but because that gate was never truly open to me. For a long time, I thought maybe I was just jealous. Jealous of my friends who had dads that checked in with a simple, "How was your day?" or "Who showed up?" even if it was just to pick them up from the station on a rainy afternoon. But slowly, I realized I wasn't jealous of what they had. I was just heartbroken to realize I never even had the chance to know what that felt like. No one ever taught me how to say "dad" gently. It was always just a word to me, one that confirmed biology, but never held any soul. When I was little, I thought he was busy. When I got older, I thought he was just distant. And now, I know the truth. He never wanted to be part of any chapter of my life. I graduated top of my class in high school. There was an awards ceremony. My mom showed up. Everyone else was posing for photos with their proud parents. Me? I stood in the middle of the schoolyard with a tired smile, and no one beside me. I texted him, "I graduated today. If you want to come, I added your name to the guest list." He never replied. He was still online, though, still posting photos, a fancy dinner captioned, "Enjoying the little things in life." I quietly deleted the message, and with it, the last bit of hope that maybe next time, he'd show up. I stopped expecting him to be present, but there was one hope I still quietly held on to, until recently, that maybe, deep down, I still mattered to him. That somewhere in his heart I was still his son. Until the day I asked him, "Dad, do you ever think about me or my brother while you're out living this amazing life?" And he turned to me, calm as ever, and said, "Why should I suffer for you too?" I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there, frozen in a moment that felt like my entire childhood crashing in. Not because he was cruel, but because he said it so casually, so effortlessly. And that's when I understood I was never someone he thought about. I was never a priority. I was never a memory worth holding on to. I was just a responsibility he fulfilled long ago and forgot. I don't want an inheritance. I don't care about being listed on any will. I don't need my name in bold on any legal document. All I ever wanted was this one thing: to know I once existed in my father's heart. Even just once. Even for a second. Even as a passing thought over dinner. I wonder how he's doing these days. That would have been enough. Enough to carry me through life without resentment. But no, that moment never came. And now, I've stopped waiting for it. I don't want anything from the world he built. Not because I don't need it, but because I now know I was never invited in. "Why should I suffer for you?" he said. And just like that, something inside me shattered. That conversation wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies. Just another quiet meeting, like dozens before. A small cafe. He arrived 20 minutes late. No apology. No, "How have you been?" I sat across from him, gripping a glass of water that had long melted its ice. I didn't plan to say anything. I thought it'd be the usual small talk, then leave. But that day, something inside me cracked. Maybe it was the years of holding back. Maybe it was the debt that kept me up the night before. Or maybe it was the phone call from my brother telling me he was dropping out of school because he couldn't afford tuition. And so I asked, not in anger, not to accuse, just asked. "Dad," I said quietly, "have you ever thought about us?" For the first time in years, he looked up and met my eyes. I continued, voice shaking. "We've never asked for much, but when we're drowning in tuition and rent, and you have so much, have you ever thought that maybe, just maybe, you could help?" He stared at me, no blink, no reaction, then leaned back, crossed his arms, shrugged, and said, in a voice so calm, it made my skin crawl, "Why should I suffer for you?" The words hit me like a fist to the chest, like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. I didn't cry. I didn't respond. I just sat there, listening to my heartbeat echo in the silence. He ordered a cappuccino, scrolled through his phone, like he hadn't just said the most soul-crushing thing a father could say. What kind of father looks at his child and asks, "Why should I suffer for you?" Like we were burdens he never agreed to carry. Like love was a punishment. Like support was some unbearable cost. I remembered all the times I imagined what life might have been like if he had ever really shown up. Maybe I would have studied better. Maybe I wouldn't have spiraled into depression. Maybe I wouldn't have felt invisible in my own family. But with that one sentence, every last thread of hope unraveled. After finishing half his coffee, he stood up without a goodbye, just muttered, "Next time, call ahead." I'm busy. I watched him walk out, designer coat, car keys in hand, disappearing into the city lights. I stayed, alone, cold, and for the first time in my life I felt like an orphan, even though my father was still alive. You know, some betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the one person who should have loved you unconditionally. And they don't need knives. Just a few honest, cold words, enough to kill the softest part of you. I walked home at dusk. On the way, I called my brother. We didn't talk about our father, just sat in quiet company, two sons without a dad. Not because he died, but because our belief in him did. I don't hate him anymore. I just feel empty. Empty like a house left to rot. Empty like those 6 rental properties he owns, now crumbling, because no one truly lives in them. After the day he said those words to me, I never went back to that coffee shop. I didn't call again, didn't text, didn't reach out on birthdays or holidays, not because I was angry, but because I had nothing left to ask. Do you know that feeling? When you spend your entire youth trying to be a child worthy of love, only to realize the father you were trying so hard to impress never planned on loving you in the first place. It's not quite anger, not even resentment. It's something colder, something that wraps around your spine and numbs every part of you. I started avoiding family gatherings. I didn't want to hear, "But he's still your dad. It's just grown-up stuff. You shouldn't hold it against him forever." Because no one really understood. I didn't need him to buy me a house. Didn't need him to pay for my tuition. I just needed a simple nod in public that said, "That's my son." And he never did that. I sank. Every morning felt like waking up with a rock on my chest. I still went to work. Still laughed with coworkers. But every night I'd come home to my tiny apartment, turn on the light, and just want to cry. Not because I was weak, but because I was exhausted. Exhausted from always being the strong one in the family. Exhausted from pretending, "I'm fine, Mom, it's nothing." Exhausted because I knew if I ever collapsed, no one would be there to catch me. Some nights, I just laid there, staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. One question echoing in my head over and over. If I disappeared, would anyone even notice? I knew that thought was dangerous. I didn't really want to die. I just wanted someone to stop me from going. Someone to place a hand on my shoulder and say, "Please stay. You matter. We need you. This world still needs you." But no one did. Not because they didn't care, but because I'd gotten so good at hiding my pain, no one could see it anymore. We, my generation, didn't grow up in war or famine. We grew up in houses with Wi-Fi, smartphones, air conditioning, but we lacked love. We lacked affirmation. We lacked a hand that genuinely reached for ours, and that kills us. Slowly, from the inside out. I lost faith in the idea of family. Not because it doesn't exist, but because I never truly got to live in one. A real family runs to you when you fall, sits quietly beside you when you're tired, pats your back when you succeed. I never had that. Not once. I don't blame everyone. I've just come to understand something. If family is the rope tying me to someone who has already let go, then maybe I need to tie myself to something else. Something kinder. Something softer. Maybe that something is me. I never received an apology, and I no longer wait for one. Not because I've forgotten, but because I've come to understand something. Some people go their whole lives never learning how to say, "I'm sorry," because they never truly believe they did anything wrong. I don't forgive him. I don't forgive the silence when I needed him most. I don't forgive the times he acted like I didn't exist. I don't forgive the look in his eyes when I said, "I've been trying so hard," and he looked away. But I also don't carry hatred, not because I'm noble or generous, but because holding on to hatred means keeping a piece of him inside me. And I don't want that. I don't want to become the silent father, the cold older brother, the emotionally distant partner. I don't want to wake up one day and realize I've become the very man who hurt me. So I choose to keep living. Not to shine brightly so he'll regret it. Not to prove I was worthy. Not to win any kind of race. I choose to live, so I won't become him. I've learned to say, "I love you, Mom," before it's too late. I hug my younger brother when he gets home from a long shift. I listen when my friends talk, even when I don't have the right words to respond. Sometimes, I just stay present. I've started writing thank you letters to myself, to the boy who never gave up, even when no one stood behind him. I know I'll still have weak days, nights I wake up from dreams that leave me unsettled, moments when I stand in the middle of a crowded street and wonder, does anyone truly love me? But now, I have a different answer. I love me, and I won't abandon myself ever again. I don't wish for him to come back. I don't wish for him to change. I only wish that I never let the pain he left behind become something I pass on to others. If I have a child one day, I won't give them everything. But I will give them the one thing I never had. The feeling of being loved, genuinely, unconditionally. I don't need to defeat him. I don't need him to lose. All I need is to walk out from under his shadow, quietly, proudly, and gentle enough to never repeat it.